Welcome back, students. Summer 2020, Virtual Melt University. Can you believe that it's week 7? Where has the time gone? I always get sad in week 7 because I know that, we're all about to break up and we're all going to go back obviously it's different this summer in a virtual format, but I will tell you, like I said, I continue to say this, one of the things is this is the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done professionally. It's been a vision of a dream I've had since I was in Auburn back in the 80s. And to be able to take this into a virtual format has been so gratifying. Your responses, your sharing, your feedback, your input it's been so amazingly gratifying as well. And so I also will tell you, as we prepare to go into week 8, it will not be the end of Melt University. It's only going to be the beginning. The Monday thereafter, coming out of Melt University, we're going to begin publishing a weekly newsletter, which will have commentary from me, expert commentary on helping guide you with your careers, your internships, your virtual internships, helping you navigate your return to the college campus and finding those intern and volunteer opportunities on campus. We pointed out, we found a lot of new areas. We're continuing to find a lot of new areas. And so I'm excited to share with you. We'll have a newsletter coming out. We're going to begin a video series helping with you. We'll continue our podcast. The book's coming out on September 15th because, as we've all said, this battle that we're in a COVID environment is not over. And it's far from over. And it's far from over based on you going back to school, what that environment's going to look like, how you're going to secure internships and opportunities going forward, and how you're going to secure jobs going forward, particularly in the marketing services industry, which, as we've all talked about, has been very hard hit. And so I want to continue this labor of love for you, for your colleagues, for your classmates, for your professors, for your career advisors, and continue to share. We have had a tremendous 7 weeks, some tremendous podcasts, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback, and we've got a lot more coming down the pipe. I'm really, really pleased so far. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's talk about some of our other famous Melt University alumni. We've had some tremendous ones. One of my favorite ones is Haley Curtis. Shout out to Haley Curtis, LSU graduate. As many cases as we talk about emotional connections, leveraging emotional connections, her aunt, Meg Reggie, big time PR guru in Atlanta, said, hey, I got a really, really great, bright niece that's going to graduate from LSU in 15 with a graphic design degree. Would you mind her interning? And I go, no, of course not. And this back, 2015, we didn't have as many interns as we have now. But Haley shows up, and I got to tell you, she just rocked the house. I mean, literally, was not only an intern, but started really performing and doing some tremendous jobs. She had a tremendous attitude. She pitched in there. She helped us work late. She helped us work on pitches. She's a brilliant graphic designer and artist. Evolved from Melt University and stayed with Melt and me for several years, and then got a really big time job at Carter's Inc., which is the big baby clothes company based here in Atlanta and up north 75, and is really, really doing well. And also has evolved really, really well with her life. She's a great animal lover. She used to bring her puppy in here, and I'm just really, really proud of her. But hook up with Haley. We've had a lot of great LSU participants in this thing, but she can also give you some tremendous pointers as well. Another one of my favorites, Perry Odachowski. I love that name as well. Shout out to Perry, University of Georgia, Go Dogs grad, came through here, Melt University 2019, and I think she was in one of our fall programs or winter programs, if I'm not mistaken, because we kind of do them year round, but really just rolled her sleeves up and really got at it. And wanted to learn, had a quest to learn, brought the heat every day, had a tremendous attitude. And Perry is now with Havas, another tremendous agency worldwide and in Atlanta as well. But as we've continued to talk about this, parlay this virtual experience, we've talked about how to how to pad that resume. We've talked about how to describe it on that resume. We've talked about linking up with these podcast participants and guests and leading in with them. We're opening those doors for you because, like I said, that's going to be critical. But Perry's one of my favorites. And then one of my all-time favorites, way back in 2012, Lee Lyons Denzik. Another emotional connection. A friend of mine growing up was a friend of her father's in Huntsville, Alabama. And he said, hey, I had this really, really sharp girl coming out of the University of Alabama, had played tennis, really great attitude, loved sports, student athletes, loved the student athletes as well. And just came in and dove right in, did a tremendous job with us, graduated into our program, full-time employee. And then she had a tremendous opportunity to move to Florida to work with the PGA of America, where she was able to put on the PGA Championship. She was able to service sponsors at the highest level, and has really, these are great examples. And, you've heard from Ty Votal, Caroline Votal, her father, Rick Anderson. I think his podcast is coming up too, right, Zach? I mean, we got Rick. So careers in the professional golf industry. So special shout out today to Haley, Perry, and Lee Lyons. And we hope you guys are staying well and safe. Tuesday's podcast think about this. This is amazing. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, the SEC, in the middle of all of the things that he's going through with deciding, will SEC football play this year? We pray that it does. We all do. Took his time to share his career path and career journey, and amazing lessons. He grew up in upstate New York, pushed himself out of his comfort zone to move way into Louisiana, to dive in the deep end, to take the job as the golf coach at a school in Louisiana. And just, he's a servant leader. We love those. And, but for him to take that time to talk about careers and path and his theories of these types of things was just amazing. And the president of NASCAR, Steve Phelps, think about this. Think about the compassion, the empathy that these guys, during all the things they have going on at the top rungs of their career, to take their time to share with you their career path. And today, Reese Davis, really the face of ESPN College Game Day, the face of ESPN College Football, very, very humble gentleman, Muscle Shoals, University of Alabama, Columbus, Georgia, the path that he took, the risk that he took, calling from a payphone in Columbus, Ohio, to get the job at ESPN. Just an amazing gentleman. And in Shannon Watkins, what can I say about her? One of my favorites in the world. Head of marketing for Aflac. Tremendous leader, tremendous path. She talks about, and we've talked about this a lot, she went to college with one different career path, maybe thinking she's going to be a chemist or a doctor or something like, Tia Cummings or whatever. And then all of a sudden she falls in love with brand management and brand marketing. And now she is the marketing leader with one of the largest and most recognizable brands in the country and in the world, sharing her path. Next week, we've got some tremendous ones. Jordan Bajant, one of the top talent agents in the world. Rick Anderson, head of billions of dollars of media rights with the PGA. Tim Zulawski, in charge of billions of revenue with Mr. Oscar Blank's companies, the Falcons, the United, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Rachel Boucher, who is the executive editor of Event Marketer magazine. I hope you're following Rachel and Event Marketer to see the new and emerging industries coming out of that. One of my favorites, Craig Silver, executive producer, CBS Sports. We've got TJ Abrams, who's coming in from IHG, David McKillop, CEO of Chuck E. Cheese, Blake Lawrence of Open Doors. That's another one we talked about you following. Mark Charty, one of the most prolific Hollywood sports producers in the world. Don Yeager, a famous author, and who am I forgetting? Anybody else on the docket? Anyway, tremendous talent on our podcast. And as I told you, we will continue these amazing podcasts because I want to continue connecting you with these leaders. I want to continue inspiring and sharing their path and their story. We're all going to need it together during these perilous times that we're in. We're going to need to help you establish those relationships, those connectivity, open your eyes to many new career paths as well. But like I said, this has been, like I said, I'm getting sad, but I'm also excited that we're going to evolve our program far beyond next week. And I got a lot of resumes in. I hope I've helped with those resumes. I think Q shared his out on LinkedIn. Brennan and a lot of you guys are sharing a lot of input and connectivity as well. So let's move into chapter 7 of our book. And this word is maybe one of my favorite words in the English vocabulary, English language, is be relentless. That's been a model and theme and thematic of mine probably since I set foot on Auburn campus. Believe it or not, this would have been 40 years ago in September. And as I've told you, I've related to you, I recognized pretty quick a couple things. First of all, it's the biggest place I'd ever been. Secondly, I recognized there was sort of a caste system there. Me coming out of Lower Alabama, small town Alabama, one red light, 800 people. I lived in a very sheltered existence, an amazing existence, sort of like a Mayberry existence. But when I got there, I was like, wow, look at all these people. And then I sort of, just began to sort of recognize, I'm like, there's sort of the haves and the have-nots, whatever you want to say. And I get when I say this in the classes I speak to, I get a lot of head nods on this. But I knew I wanted to be a sports writer. I had a passion. And then I caught on pretty quick. I'm like, these people are really no different than me. They may have been raised in a different environment, different circumstances and those types of things. But, we were all sort of starting over. Even though they may have had high school friends there and those types of things and different schools and those types of things. But I said, I think I can hold my own with these people from an intellect perspective. But I recognized really quick, I'm like, I know I can outwork them. And I know I can be relentless. But I really didn't know as a freshman coming out of that environment really what that really meant. And as I've shared with you, I kind of sort of sputtered around that first year, lived off campus, didn't make any friends that were my age, and lived in an apartment that kind of had a lot of graduate students and everything. And so went home that first summer, kind of discouraged, sort of not knowing the path. And as we've learned, that's okay. I've got a son who's a rising sophomore at Georgia, Carter. He's going through the same thing that I went through and you guys have went through. Your path's not going to be linear. It's not going to be this. It's going to be this. Like I said, we're all strapping into the great American screen machine again. But what I did know is I'm like, all right, I've got desire. I've got a dream. I think I'm smart and I know I'll outwork you. And I'm going to just be relentless in the pursuit of that craft. And I'm like, all right, it might take me a day or two longer to achieve this because I don't have the same, advantages that some other people, but I did not let that get me down. I used it as a motivating tool, quite frankly. And then I said, look, I'm going to get up day to day and I'm going to do the best I can. And so as we discussed, my first journalism class was taught by the sports information director, David Housel. We've talked to several athletic directors, and they've enlightened you on brand new career paths within the athletic department. Name, image, and likeness is a big one we've talked about. Mental health is a big one we've talked about. And I'm learning these things as well. Compliance with the rules and regulations, because it's going to be a brand new world, and helping these athletes navigate name, image, and likeness in a legal way and in a rule-like way within the NCAA enforcement system. Fan safety and experience, if and when we're able to come back and watch our favorite football team play, there's going to be tremendous things. So And we've heard, a lot of content creation. You guys are the masters of that. So my point is that there's going to be a lot of great opportunities for you when we go back to school, which are going to continue, because then those opportunities are going to translate out into the workforce. And so things I never would have thought about, the mental health and those types of things. So I had that great encounter. As we've talked about, you got to take the shot, right? So I walk up to Mr. Housel after class and I said, hey, I want to come volunteer to be in the sports publicity department. And he said, come over this afternoon and roll up your sleeves and get to work. So we've talked about taking that shot, because what if I had just packed my bag and left class? Where would I have wound up? What would have ended up with my college career? Would I found my niche? Would I found my passion? Would I have been able to build that resume and come out with the 200 articles published in newspapers and magazines and football programs all over the place? But so then I got that shot and I got to the athletic department, and I'm walking around with Coach Dye, and I'm walking around with Bo Jackson, I'm walking around with Charles Barkley, and I'm seeing all these pictures of all these famous Auburn athletes that I had followed as a kid. And I'm like, wow, this is the next step. This is the next progress. And there were other student sports information student assistants in there, and I sized them up. Now, I didn't tell them I was sizing them up, but I'm like, let me just size up who's who in here, and who's the worker and who's not the worker, and who's the face man and who's the front line, and all that type of stuff. Because what I was doing is I was trying to find my niche within that group of people. And then I was trying to find out who my benchmark was going to be. And then I was going to find out where there was an opportunity or a need gap in there. And then I was going to plug my relentlessness into that space. I found out, what David Housel, I found out what he liked. Hey, what do you like for lunch? Do you like sweet tea? Hey, I, stopped and picked up a McDonald's on the way in, David. Well, coffee. I found out his personal assistant, Reba Gully, is one of the greatest human beings alive. I found out what she liked. I started building those relationships. I started building that trust. But it was all packaged in this sort of what I'll call this sort of subtle relentlessness, right? So going back to a macro level, you can't get a job. Jack Buck, famous broadcaster, says you can't get a job without experience, and you can't get experience until you have a job. So once you solve that problem, you're home free. It sounds like something Yogi Berra, you probably don't know who Yogi Berra is, but your parents do, something that Yogi Berra would say. But so in a nutshell, take the shot. NO is just the first two letters of not yet, not no. Don't take that personal. Keep coming back. You're going to crack that code. You're going to find that niche. And then once you do, you have to define your own version of relentlessness. And mine was, I'm going to outwork everybody. I'm going to build this trust. I'm going to build this relationship, and I'm going to crash through these doors. And I'm going to stay in touch with the Dick Vitales and the Paul Feinbaums and all of these famous broadcasters that I'd been seeing on television just a year or two ago or hearing on the radio. And then all of a sudden I'm driving them to the airport. And then I'm saying, well, hey, Coach Vitale, tell me about you. I mean, this guy was head coach of the Detroit Pistons and those types of things. And hey, this is back in the old days, by the way, no cell phones and things. May I have your address? Because I may want to stay in touch with you. I want to write you a letter. I want to apply for an internship, send you my resume, connect me with some other people and those types of things. And so those were my definition of relentless, right? Hey, volunteer to go cover Auburn football practice. Somebody needed to write those notes. So I went out there, and then I was able to build personal relationships with the football coaches. Then I was able to get my byline published in all the newspapers back in the day, local newspapers throughout Alabama. Then I was able to build that portfolio, and then coming out with that portfolio of 200 articles when I came out. So as we've talked about, and we've been very, very crystal clear with each other, and we've been very honest with one another. It's going to be tough in the world post-COVID. And why is it going to be tough? And this virtual intern program is an example of that. A lot of bigger companies were not, and I've heard from thousands of kids, a lot of bigger companies were not able to pivot as fast as we were. in evolving a real internship into a virtual internship program. So a lot of you guys were out of an internship and out of going to school and out of summer jobs and those types of things, which would have created a gap in your resume, which is why I think our program's been so well received. But a lot of companies are still going to struggle figuring out what these virtual internship programs look like. So we're going to continue to help educate those companies as well. But getting virtual internship programs is going to be tough. Going back into a live internship environment is going to be tough because from what I understand in my research and my reading is a lot of companies may not even ever have an office again. So think about that. If you don't have an office, how the heck are you going to do an internship, a live internship program? So we got to begin reshifting our mindset. And if you don't have an office to come in and do a job interview, how are you going to bring the heat in a virtual interview on a Zoom interview? So this is going to require an entire shift of mindset as we evolve all of our strategies going forward. But with these tips and with these tricks, we're going to all do it together because it is I told you not to be discouraging, be realistic. There's going to be a lot of other job seekers who had jobs in the marketing services sector and lost their jobs, who are willing to take a lesser job for lesser money when that job would have been reserved for you in an entry-level environment. So it's going to be a numbers game. As I told you, I used a fishing analogy. Back when I was growing up, you had to make 100 casts. You may have gotten 8 bites and you may have landed 1 or 2 fish. So what we're doing with the podcast and enlightening you on the campus and those types of things is we're trying to inflate that number or that ratio or that percentage, because if you make 500 calls and you get 40 bites, you're going to get 10 opportunities. And then with these tools, you're going to be relentless enough to land one of those out of that 10. We're trying to get you into that top 5% of job consideration. It's just going to be a brand new way of doing all of this. And frankly, too, we're all trying to figure this out right now on the fly. Melt is a smaller company than, say, Coca-Cola. It takes these big companies. I compare it to steering a speedboat to a battleship. It's going to take the companies a lot longer to sort of adjust to this new world order, and hopefully we get to the other side of it in one day. But I still think that generationally, there's going to be a giant shift in interns and entry-level jobs and offices and virtual environments as well. And as we always say, this is not personal. People say, Vince, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm in the rejection business. I may get told 99 times. In fact, by the way, I just got a big no yesterday from a client, and it stung. It didn't feel good. But it wasn't personal. It was a business decision. They're having to make business decisions, as we all are in this environment, that they wouldn't normally make. So don't get your feelings hurt in this process. And by the way, as we've also talked about, it's going to be better to get your foot in the door in some opportunity that might not necessarily be your dream job today, but it may turn into your dream job. Let's use Greg Sankey as an example. Greg Sankey was the golf coach at a small Division 2 or 3 school in Louisiana. He's now I think he's the most powerful commissioner in college football with the SEC. And and again, as I told you, I got fired from my first job, right? Well, that was another sucker punch. And I did take it very personal because I was broke in Birmingham. But I got back up on the saddle. And so, and again, being relentless now in this market is going to be completely redefined. But that's why we talk about the LinkedIn tool is the most invaluable tool there is. And even if you just spent every day mining the 20,000 followers or 26,000 we have between me and Melt, would be worth, you could spend a lot of time mining that. Now, I don't know all those 20,000 people, but I know a lot of them pretty well. And as we've talked about, another definition of relentlessness is making that emotional connection. What do I mean by that? Parents and the friends of your parents or guardians or whoever and friends of family is the lowest hanging fruit. If I get a note from you and you have an emotional connection to me through somebody that I know or very close to or very fond of, I'm going to respond. But you got to do that research. You got to do that homework. You got to lead into that. As we talked about, alumni connections are low-hanging emotional fruit as well. This is part of this relentlessness. We're going to do a big header of relentlessness and all these subtitles of relentlessness. So the alumni, let's use Auburn for an example. I'm an Auburn guy. Tim Cook, the CEO of Auburn, of Apple, is an Auburn guy. Those types of things. Hey, Mr. Cook, War Eagle, I'm fascinated with your career at Apple. Now, will a Tim Cook answer? He's a pretty busy guy, but you never know. But if you don't use that emotional connection, and as we've also talked about, when you get an opportunity, go look at the sponsors of the various athletic programs at the university that you go to. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? We talked about this. If, say, I'll use Auburn as an example. One of Auburn's biggest sponsors is a company called Yellowwood, Yellwood, Yellowwood. It's founded by an Auburn alumni named Jimmy Rain, okay? Yellowwood sponsors Auburn in a big way. So if you want a job with marketing for Yellowwood, you're an Auburn grad, you identify Jimmy Rain, you figure out how to track him down, you write him an email, you write him a letter, War Eagle, Mr. Rain, thank you for all your contributions to Auburn University. Chances are, now he may not respond, he's a busy guy as well, but he dang sure wouldn't have responded had you not at least put that nice layer of frosting on that cake you built, because you're going to have this great resume, you're going to leverage that emotional connection. So no matter what university you're at, big or small, go to the athletic department website, and you may have to dig a little bit through the site, but it'll say sponsors or it'll have the roster of companies there. Then go through that roster of companies, find out who that CEO is, because chances are somebody within that company also graduated, say, from Auburn. So because they're sponsoring the program, not only of a business objective, but as an emotional hook as well. So the sponsors of the athletic programs of the university, and take some time to maybe sometimes look at the names on the buildings at your university. I'll give you a great example at the University of Georgia. If you look at the business school, Dan Amos's name's on there. Well, who is Dan Amos? Well, he's the chairman of Aflac. If you look on there, a fellow named Doug Ivester, his name on there. Well, who was he? He was the CEO of Coca-Cola. So immediately, if you begin, and obviously they were graduates of the University of Georgia, but if you begin mining that, you can draw paths into job opportunities at Aflac through Mr. Amos. Hey, Mr. Amos, go Dogs, went to Georgia. Thank you for your contributions to the business school. Heard Shannon Watkins on the Melt podcast. I know Melt does marketing for Aflac, the famous Nick Saban spots, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to put yourself in this position to win. You've got to put yourself, as we say, you just want to be in a position to win the game at the end. But this is all sort of under the header of being relentless. And so where are we going to find these jobs in a COVID or post-COVID world? We've talked about LinkedIn. We've talked about knowing your target. We've talked about softening that target. We've talked about leveraging emotional connections, whether it's friends or family or alumni or sponsors or, like I said, I'm trying to stimulate you to think about all of these things, around you. Let's say if you went to Auburn and Coach Dye was a famous legacy. If you're doing your research on Coach Dye, you'll know that his son, Pat Dye Jr., is a famous sports agent. So if you want to learn about being a sports agent and you want to work in that industry, and you went to Auburn, or you may have not gone to Auburn, but you're a fan of Coach Dye because he coached at other places and he played at other places. But if you're reaching out to Pat Dye Jr., you're leveraging that emotional connection. But it's all under the header of being relentless. And again, I tell you this, and I tell you this all the time. I'm doing the same thing that you're doing. especially now. I mean, the world of sports is just now coming back a little bit, and live events are not coming back in the foreseeable future. So I'm having to be as relentless as you are, but just in a different way and a different level and a different format. And so, and then at some point, as we say, hopefully you're going to be able to get off the computer and the phone and actually talk to people. But as we say, in the spirit of being relentless, start right now. If you're a rising senior and you hadn't figured out if you're going to go to graduate school yet or not, but start right now laying the groundwork to either future intern programs next spring and summer. Hopefully we've got COVID behind us. Start now on the internship path. Start now on the job path. Start scanning those job boards within companies that you want to work for. But don't write the generic reach out to info@Melt, careers@Melt. I'm getting tons of resumes, and you've heard this many, many times ad nauseum, but I'm getting tons of resumes that says, careers@Melt, my name's Joe Smith, attached to my resume, and I need to make X dollar a year. Guess what? It flushes, right? Because you're showing me now what type of employee you're going to be. You're showing me in an audition process. And by the way, this is going to get harder because you're not maybe going to be able to come and interview live. And so we got to have all these little bitty tricks of the trade. When you're on Zoom, bring the heat. You know, I got my Elton John t-shirt on today. Throwback to Elton, but you got to present yourself in a very, very, very positive format, because even now through the lens of a computer and that, it's going to be even harder to do that. So it's going to be a huge numbers game. As we've talked about in the spirit of relentlessness, if somebody doesn't respond to you immediately on LinkedIn, you've either got to change your approach, they're not going to respond and they don't match your value system, or they're playing an Easter egg out there for you, planting an Easter egg to say, all right, let's see, I'm not going to answer this kid for a week. Let's see if he reaches back out. So it's a little test, it's a little audition, those types of things. And so it's going to require a tremendous amount of effort. It's going to require a tremendous amount of knowledge and resources. And because you got to think about it, all these executives now that you're reaching out to, they're working in a home environment as well. So they may be teaching their kids, they may be homeschooling their kids, they may be virtual learning, they may be pets in the background, they may have 12 Zoom calls in a day, that type of stuff. So you've got to begin putting yourself in the mindset of these people as well. And so what are you going to do to stand out above that crowd? And then we've talked about ad nauseum, the follow-up, the handwritten note. Now, to a lot of your credit, I'm hearing from a lot of our podcast guests that you are in fact writing and following up. And I'm going to tell you this, people are blown away by that. And so shout out and kudos to you all who've reached out and written handwritten notes and sent your resumes to our podcast guests. Because I will tell you this, if everybody listening today hasn't sent a personal thank you note to every podcast talent, you are missing a huge mark, because that is making a massive impression and a massive connection in the realm of follow-up. We had a tremendous feedback from Tracy Wolfson from CBS when she was on, and she's responding and she's there to help. Everybody's there to help. We've been in the same boat you've been in pre-COVID. We're in the boat you're in right now as well. So you've got to be relentless in this task. Where to find the jobs? Obviously, we talked about knowing your target. We may have to update Chapter 7, Zach, in a post-COVID world, and David over here, because you may not be able to reach people in a face-to-face environment. But so we may have to retool this a little bit, because there's going to be a whole new training exercise on securing a job in a virtual environment, a virtual format, virtual climate. And we're doing it now. We're getting tons of great resumes in, and we're having to do these interviews over Zoom calls and those types of things. So we're looking for little angles within the Zoom interview. So like, if you are doing the Zoom interview, not only do you need to dress up really, put a nice shirt on and all that, be very aware of your background, right? Because if you got something crazy in the background, that may be an emotional cue that something's awry, or that may even distract the interviewer that's interviewing you. And then try to, if you're going to do Zoom interviews and those types of things too, get it in an environment where you at least can get some peace and quiet. You know, nobody's offended now if there's a dog barking or a baby crying in the background, but if you can set it up in a quiet environment, if you can set it up with a nice backdrop, if you can set up with having a nice, nice shirt on or something like that. And then if you can do like we're doing the graphics. And here's the other thing too, is turn your phone off when you're doing the Zoom interview, because you don't want it ringing. You don't want it distracted. You don't want to be looking down with, TikTok or something rolling off of there to keep you distracted, because again, you may not have but one shot at this audition. And then build yourself some graphics on from your resume. Like I said, when Quentin reposted his resume on LinkedIn, we had coached him through a really pretty virtual format. He had a lot of, first of all, when he sent it to me, it was a 3-page Word document, which it was chock full of great information. And we peeled out, he was an Eagle Scout. We moved that to the front. We got it on one page. We had it in a vertical format. And then we had a lot of other information in a horizontal format. And then we've talked about be very, very precise in your ask. Do your research, do your homework. You can define different career and job objectives in the header. What do I mean by that? We've talked about that, and I'll pick on Q for just a minute. Hey, successful Eagle Scout who's trying to translate or parlay his love of sports into a sports social media organization. Well, that pretty much says it all. But he's also bragging in a very discreet way. I was an Eagle Scout. There's an emotional connection there. I achieved, great to get the Eagle Scout badges and merit badges and all this type of stuff. You're communicating what you want to do. And by the way, even if it doesn't jive with what the job is or what the organization is, at least you're very specific of that outreach. And like when, another pet peeve is when people say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I'll do anything for the organization. As we've heard from a lot of our podcast people, how are you going to bring value to that organization? Well, I learned these traits as an Eagle Scout. I learned follow-up. I learned, it was a 3-year program. I stuck with it. I have this great attitude. I ran my student newspaper, those types of things. You gotta communicate value to that organization. And like I said, this is applying for a job is sort of a misnomer. It's not an application. It's a process. There's not going to be hardly any lightning strikes, and there's certainly not going to be many lightning strikes now. And it's a part of getting this great compilation of information. You've padded your resume. Many of you students have reached out and said, how do I describe my virtual Melt U internship? Well, I mean, we've talked about it, and a lot of you are doing it now, but I, one bullet, heard from a podcast of 50 top speakers, including Jim Dinkins, president of Coca-Cola, Craig Silver of CBS, Ty Votaw of the PGA, Steve Phelps from NASCAR, Greg Sankey of the SEC. So those are thought starters. Those are bullets, and, participated in the weekly lunch and learn sessions. And so, because employers they're going to be impressed that you took the time of the summer to do an 8-week virtual program. They're going to be impressed you did something. Their expectations of seeing what's on your resume are going to be different because you didn't have those internship opportunities, because you didn't have those employment opportunities, and because they're going to be different types of opportunities if and when you get back to the campus as well. So what we're trying to do is frame up how you are presenting yourself. I'm getting a lot of resumes right now that say, hey, hope you're managing well in this crisis. I know live events are not there right now. I pray that you hang in there. And then, but here's when it comes back, here's how my experience would translate into value into your organization. Because I think also a lot of employers are going to be more willing to hire younger people because you are the most sophisticated consumer of your generation. So I'm talking to a lot of kids right now who are already very sophisticated content producers, right? So you're going to move up to the head of that line as opposed to somebody that may not be as sophisticated you know, in you as sophisticated as you. So I'm just trying to remove all these barriers. And as we've said, the resume is like a blind date. It's like, think about when you drive by a billboard on the interstate. You may see that billboard 3, 5, 10 seconds. So you got to make that impression. You got busy people who are really even busier with all this inundation of the Zooms and virtual office and trying to figure out what we're going to do with our sponsorships as well. So you got to have those headlines. You got to stand out. You got to know your target. And even if Jim Dinkins at Coke, who's president of Coke, pretty busy guy, doesn't respond, you could say, hey, Mr. Dinkins, I have an interest in the social media space. Do you have a recommendation of somebody from HR that I could reach out to? Or do you have a recommendation in your social media department of somebody that I could reach out to? Right? Then he shares that name. Then let's say it's Joe Smith in social media. And then you write Mr. Smith and say, Mr. Smith, I was in contact with Jim Dinkins through Vince Thompson, and they recommended I reach out to you. So what are you doing? You're connecting all those emotional dots to get to that right person. Now, they may say, hey, we don't have anything right now. And your follow-up is, thank you, I'll be back in touch. And hey, by the way, do you know anybody else in the industry that might have an opportunity there? I might should network with, and I might should follow up with, because we talked about this constellation or this pyramid scheme of these emotional contacts, because there's no reason that we all can't be in this together now, because I can tell you, all the people you're reaching out to, as I've told you, they've been in the same position that you're in. They've been relentless. They've worked hard. Think of the Greg Sankey example. We're all in crazy positions right now as well. So we're all sort of more relatable than we've kind of ever been, not hierarchical, because of the position we're in. Many of the people that you hear on our podcast, they have students, they have family, sons and daughters who are in the same position that you're in. So in a weird way, things are a lot more relatable right now than they may have ever been when they were hierarchical. So don't get discouraged. Be relentless in this process. We're going to get to the other side of this. And like I said, I'm so excited to help remove barriers. Like I said, to use that billboard example, the follow-up is relentless, and then build that cadence of communication, with these people. I'll give you a perfect example. I was watching a television program recently, and this gentleman named Isaac Moorhead came on with another great student portal called Crash. And I was like, man, that guy's doing some things similar to us, and I want to reach out to him. This is a true story, and Zach will attest to this. Literally last week this happened. I see the guy on the show. I'm like, man, I really like what he's saying. Sounds like we got a lot in common. I go to LinkedIn. Now, by the way, this guy is younger than me and a hell of a lot smarter. But I go to LinkedIn. I immediately friend him. And then when I friend him, I've got the premium LinkedIn package. I was able to send him a message and an email. And I said, hey, dear Mr. Moorhead, even though he's probably like 20 years younger than me, I just saw you on the program. I really like what you're about. Here's who I am. Here's my business. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my vision for helping kids. Here's my vision for Melt University. Literally within an hour, because I had my act together on who he was and who I was. He hits me back on LinkedIn. We set a call up together within a day or two. We talk on the phone. We start exchanging ideas, and we're going to wind up doing some great things together. So I'm doing the same thing that you're doing, which is being relentless and noticing all these cues around you. You know, the articles that we tell you to read, the trade industries we tell you, the journals we tell you to read, pick out those names in there. You know, use that as your, hey, Mr. Thompson, I saw you quoted in the Sports Business Journal. Find those little Easter eggs within those articles. But I'm very, very encouraged about where we're going, together in this. And again, I'm very excited for us to evolve this, because I want you to continue to share this with your friends and professors and colleagues and your resume and your career development offices and those types of things, because In chaos, there's opportunity. And I think this is going to be the greatest opportunity for you guys to level the playing field in the internship and job search going forward. So we're going to open it up for any chat, any feedback, any questions, anybody out there, shout outs. Got a good crowd audience today. What's it like balancing your clients such as Cam Newton and putting on entertainment venues? Well, as I said, the reason I love what I do is that no hour is the same, right? And so Cam Newton is different than Jim Dinkins, the president of Coke, is different than Shannon Watkins of Aflac. So, you know, the beautiful thing about being in our industry is there's no hour that is the same. Let's see. Chloe. Hey, Chloe Covington, what advice can you give on perfecting your LinkedIn profile when sending requests to CEOs and other professionals? I think the main thing, and I say this over and over again, but know your target very precisely. And I mean, I'm talking about deep, and then be very precise in what you're asking them. So for instance, Jim Dinkins, you know, you would have listened, you'd have known that his father was a Methodist minister. You'd have known he went to Georgia and he was a leader in his fraternity, and from an organizational and operational perspective, he gained that experience. You would know that his first job was with Procter & Gamble. You would know that one of these big projects was, you know, NASCAR and Folgers Coffee, which he'd never been to a NASCAR race. And then you know everything about his climb within the Coca-Cola company. So the advice is be very precise in knowing your target, and then be very precise in saying, hey, Mr. Dinkins, I would like an opportunity within social media within the Coca-Cola company. Can you direct me to the right person? So precision is the name of the game, particularly, well, at any level, but particularly at the CEO level, because these guys are busy and they're going to want to, we're going to, anonymous attend to you covered everything today, but War Damn Eagle to you as well. Hopefully have some football coming up pretty soon as well. So I hope that precision is the name of the game. So guys, week 7, virtual Melt University, summer 2020. What a crazy summer it's been. We're going to get back to school. We're going to get back in the job market. We're going to get back into the internship market. We've got some very exciting plans coming up for you. So we roll on. Thank you so much.